Welcome to Psychology Social Hour. My name is Cami Jones, and I am the Group Tours and Communications Manager for the St. Joseph Museums. And today we are so pleased to be joined by Adam Meyers. Adam is a police officer, and he is going to talk about police officer mental health. So I'm going to let you take the floor, Adam.
Thanks, Cami. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about mental health. That's what it's all about. I'm just a normal guy. I was born and raised in the city of Racine, which is between Chicago, Illinois, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a police officer. I lived on Highway 20 within the city of Racine, and it was one of the main thoroughfares that went through the city. And every time that I would hear a siren, I would run up to the window, I'd look outside, and hopefully I wanted to see that cop car because I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. But fire engines, ambulances, those are cool too. But I wanted to see that cop car. And every time I did, I was like, oh, an ER car, because of the way the siren made that kind of, noise. And my parents said the first time that I saw a police officer get out of an car, I looked at them and I was like, an car man. I want to be an car man. So throughout my life, I did what I thought was necessary to reach that goal, my dream of being an car man, a police officer. So I graduated from high school. After high school, I went to college and secured a degree in criminal justice. And then I went into the Army for 5 years, active duty military police. And I was married and had one daughter at the time. And when I was done in the Army, I moved back home to Racine. And within a year of applying, I was hired by the Racine Police Department, where it all started. It was a dream come true. It was kind of surreal. I remember when I finally got off my field training program and was in my squad car by myself. I was driving down towards Lake Michigan, where all the county buildings are, and I'd look to the side where the county buildings had these very large windows, kind of mirrored windows, and I would see myself driving my squad car, and I'm like, wow, I'm really doing it. This is awesome. Um, so I was married at the time, and we decided to leave the Racine Police Department after about 5, 6 years and move up north about 3.5 hours away, where I took another police job. And during that time, our marriage broke up. We ended up getting a divorce. I do have two daughters. My oldest is Sydney Marie, and my youngest is Peyton Elizabeth. Sydney is 27, Peyton is 24. And my ex-wife and I, we're cordial. We get along now. Sure, like at the beginning of any divorce, it's kind of challenging, but we're doing pretty good now. And I took a job with a police department in that area. And on April 8th, 2016, at about 5:15 p.m., which was a Friday, I was involved in a critical incident. I used deadly force on someone who armed themselves with a hatchet inside our Walmart store. And I was seated at a desk inside the police department. I was typing up a retail theft report to a retail store called Shopco. It doesn't exist anymore, but I remember typing up that retail theft report, and then I was getting dispatched to Walmart. And I was kind of half listening and half not. And they basically said, can you respond to Walmart and assist two chaperones with somebody who is refusing to leave the store? They just wanted the police to help escort this person out. Later, we found out that this person, her name was Melissa. This person was a patient at a state mental health facility in an adjacent community. And it's my understanding she was out on a good behavior pass, and they had gone to a fast food restaurant. And then when they were done there, they went across the street to Walmart to do some shopping. And when it was time to go, she refused to leave. She walked back towards the sporting goods section, and she ripped open a hatchet from the packaging. Now, when I first got the dispatch call, it wasn't very emergent. It was basically respond to Walmart and help removing from somebody from the store. And we do that all the time. We respond to businesses, restaurants, people's homes. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't emergent. So I walked out the back of the police department. I jumped in my squad car and I started driving to Walmart, which was about, I'd say probably about a mile and a half away. And Dispatch kept one of the chaperones on the line and kind of gave me the play-by-play as to what was going on, and it became more and more emergent. Dispatch advised me that she is now in possession of a knife, which we found out later on it wasn't a knife, and not that that would make it any less threatening if it was a knife, but and when I heard that, that's when I turned on my emergency lights and sirens and started traveling at a higher rate of speed to get to Walmart. And initially, I was going to go through the auto center because pretty much all Walmarts are set up the same. You have the auto center, the sporting goods section, and then the rest of the store. So my initial response plan was to go through the auto center and hopefully keep her isolated back in that area so she wouldn't walk up towards the front of the store. But as I was responding, she began walking up towards the front of the store. She was threatening customers. And so that kind of, changed my whole response idea. And Walmart usually has two entrances, a general merchandise entrance and then a grocery entrance. And I knew she was walking up towards the front of the store from sporting goods, so I thought she's probably coming towards the general merchandise entrance. So what I did is when I pulled in the parking lot, my lights and sirens were going, and there were a lot of people in the parking lot. Nobody would get out of the way. I'm thinking, will you please move? There's an emergency in the store. I got to get in there. And everybody's kind of like looking like, hey, look at the cop car. What's going on? And finally, I was able to pull up to the general merchandise entrance, kind of block the door. And what I did was I turned my sirens off and left my lights going because I was hoping that if anybody was coming to Walmart, they would see my squad car and think, yeah, maybe I shouldn't go in that door. Something's going on. And what I did is I exited my squad car. I drew my weapon right away because I didn't know where she was. They said she was walking towards the front of the store, and she could have very well met me right inside the door. She wasn't there. I saw a man and a woman standing there, and I'm like, where is she? Where is she? And they pointed down towards the health and beauty aisle, towards the lawn and garden health and beauty aisle main intersection. So I ran down towards there and I made contact with her. And initially, her back was facing me, and I identified myself and started giving her verbal commands. And then she turned and faced me, and then I realized that's not a knife, she has a hatchet. And I gave her multiple verbal commands to stop, to drop the hatchet. She wouldn't listen. She kept advancing towards me, and then I made the decision to shoot. And I ended up shooting her twice. One round went in and out of her right leg and actually continued down the aisle and struck a door in the lawn and garden. And the second shot, I hit her more in the sternum right here. And then she fell to the ground. And I know when I pulled the trigger, that changed everything. But by me pulling the trigger, I changed lives. Not only did I change my life, but I changed her life. Eventually, I found out, I mean, she did die, so I took her life. Anybody in the store that witnessed the shooting, because there was about a dozen witnesses, her two chaperones, her family, her friends, her young daughter will never be able to see her again. And even people completely across the opposite side of Walmart that may have just heard the gunshots, and they all have a story now that one day we were at Walmart and the cops shot somebody. And so after I pulled the trigger, I got on the radio right away and I advised dispatch that there were shots fired and requested EMS. And so they got EMS rolling to Walmart. And then I remember looking around to the other customers that were in the area, the witnesses, and I'm like, please check yourself and please check each other because I wanted to make sure that my rounds only struck her and nobody else. And then I looked at a Walmart employee and I said, will you please get on the intercom system and ask if there's a nurse or a doctor, anyone in the store that can come over and help. And there just happened to be a nurse right around the corner in the light bulb aisle, and she's like, "I'm a nurse," and she came over and I guess did what she could. Everything just seemed surreal. Um, I knew what I had just done, and I knew I did the right thing. Um, but it just seemed surreal. It's hard to explain. Um, I know the last thing that I remember was she was walking towards me and she was kind of making a figure eight swooshing motion with the hatchet. And that's the last thing I remember. But witnesses said the last thing that she did was she lunged towards me with the hatchet. And I don't remember that. Um, People tell me I don't know much about the brain. People tell me it has something to do with your brain protecting you from trauma, which is great because I still don't remember that, and I even remember watching news stories about that, and it's like that didn't happen, but you have almost a dozen witnesses saying it did, and then Walmart has cameras everywhere too. So um, when everything was said and done at Walmart, I remember being walked out of the store by my corporal, which was great because he was my field training officer when I first started working at this department. So it was somebody that I trusted, somebody that knew me, somebody that I knew was going to take care of me because I was a mess. I mean, I just got done shooting somebody. I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I did, but it was just really surreal. And so we went out to his squad car, and almost immediately upon sitting in his squad car, he goes, "Hey, check that out." And it was the media. The media was there like that. And I remember one of the reporters even coming up to the passenger side of the squad car and talking to me. And I, I don't remember what they said. And my corporal said something to him, and then we drove to the police department. And once we got to the police department, I was sitting in a conference room and I was ready to give a drug test, a urine test. I wanted to talk. I wanted to tell everybody what was going on. This is what I did. This is why I did it. You know, we had the Professional Police Association attorneys show up, the village attorneys show up, and we talked about a few things, and then I was allowed to go home. And they did take my duty weapon, and I was still in full uniform with my duty belt, and the squad car that I was driving was my take-home squad car. So once they said I could go home, I'm like, okay. And I walked out the back of the police department, jumped in my squad car, and started driving home. And I don't remember the drive home. I lived in that community. I could probably tell you what route I took, but I don't remember it. But before I started driving, I remember I need to tell my mom and dad. I gotta let my mom and dad know what's going on because they live 3.5, hours away. And I didn't want them to find out through social media, through the news, through a text message. Hey, did you hear what happened to Adam? Nothing like that. So I reached up into my visor and pulled my cell phone down, and I had 28 missed calls and text messages already. And it was from people that may have watched the news, knew I was working, but didn't see me on the news. So they're thinking, hey, Adam probably was involved in the shooting. And there was even people from years ago in the police academy that I hadn't kept in contact with. And, we're all cops. We have ways that we can get people's phone numbers. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But I called my mom and dad. My mom answered the phone, happy to hear from me because, I'm her baby boy and firstborn and everything. And we live so far away. And I said, hey, mom, is dad there? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, can you get him on the phone? And she's like, just a second. And then he got on the phone, yo, all happy too. And I said, I just want to let you know that I shot somebody at work. I'm okay. And I'm going home right now. And it was kind of just a weird phone call to make to your parents. And later on, I don't remember exactly how long after that phone call, my mom and I talked, and she's like, honey, I didn't even recognize your voice. I could tell you weren't okay. I mean, you said you were fine, but you weren't okay. I could tell you were in shock. And I think I was because I don't even remember that drive home. I did drive home, like I said. The first thing I did was pull in my driveway, go into my living room, and I was divorced, and my two daughters were with my ex-wife. But the first thing I did when I walked into my house is I knelt down next to my love seat and I prayed that Melissa wouldn't die. I didn't want her to die. And honestly, I didn't think she was going to. She was a bigger woman. And when she was on the ground, she was talking and she was answering questions to paramedics, and it just didn't cross my mind. I mean, sure, I shot her, but it just never crossed my mind that she would die. And after I prayed, I went into my bedroom and I took all my gear off and I sat at the foot of my bed and I just felt heavy, like so heavy, even with all my gear off. And once I took a couple of deep breaths and kind of composed myself, I I ordered a pizza, um, double bacon, double sausage, with pepperoni, everything on it, and turned on the news to see what they were talking about. And I was told not to turn on the news, but I know what I'm doing. I don't have to listen to the professionals, right? So I watched a little bit of the news and then I went to bed. And when I went to bed, I slept great. I slept like a rock. I didn't have nightmares, bad dreams, flashbacks, any dreams. I just slept like a rock. And I think maybe it has to do with the adrenaline dump after the shooting. I'm not sure, but I slept great. And in the morning, I woke up and I thought to myself, I got to try to do something normal today, if that's even possible after you shoot somebody. And believe it or not, I get my hair cut every week. Um, and that's what I was planning on doing. I'm going to go get my hair cut. I'm going to go pick up my girls, and then I'll do something for the weekend. And while I was walking out to my car, my chief called me. And it was a typical conversation. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing good. And he asked me, when can you come in and see me? And I said, well, I'm going to run and get my hair cut and get my kids, and then I'll come see you. And he said, well, Adam, I didn't want to tell you this over the phone, but she died. And I respect him for doing that. I really do, because he wanted me to know right away, just like I wanted my mom and dad to know right away, because he didn't want me to find out through the news or a text message or on Facebook or anything like that. So once that conversation was over, I just remember sitting there thinking, what's going to happen now? I actually killed somebody. I just didn't shoot somebody. This person is dead now. And um, yeah, it was just such a shock to me. And I did go get my hair cut, and I didn't pick my kids up. My ex-wife, kept our daughters. And then I went and met the chief. And I barely remember getting my hair cut. Everything was kind of just numb. Everything was just, I don't remember a lot of things. And when I met with the chief, he asked me how I was doing. He was very supportive. And he said that he was going to release my police department photograph and my name and full transparency, and let people know who I am. And I was probably thinking a million things, but the one thing I was worried about was my police picture. I considered my fat picture because I was overweight, my uniform was tight, and I'm thinking, I don't want that out on the internet or on the news. Everybody, that's a horrible picture. And I even asked the chief, I'm like, can you give me like an hour so I can kind of edit it or thin it up and the picture before you're, and he's like, Adam, we're not going to do that. And you can Google my name now and you'll see that picture. But that's kind of like what I was thinking about. And after that meeting was over, I had the rest of the weekend off, the rest of Saturday and Sunday off, because I didn't have to be into the sheriff's office until Monday morning to start the investigation into my shooting. But I don't remember the weekend after that meeting. And I still see a therapist today, and we've talked about that. And that whole weekend was a blur. I have no idea what I did. And so Monday, I had to drive to the sheriff's department and participate in the investigation. And I remember when I was driving there, I was really nervous, and I was nervous about what if the 911 call and what if the videos they have didn't line up with what I remembered. And for some reason, I didn't think they had cameras. I don't know where I got that thought, but I didn't think they had cameras. And once I got there, an investigator said, and I don't think he said this any ill will or be sarcastic or anything, but it's just how I took it. He said, "Oh, we have cameras or we have video," and I'm thinking, "What does that mean?" And it got me really nervous. But then once we sat down in a conference room and started going over the shooting and the cameras and 911 call, it was exactly how I remember. So after that, I had about 30 days off, administrative leave. I was paid, and I don't really remember much of that 30 days. I mean, I'm sure I enjoyed sleeping in and staying up later and kind of doing my own thing, but that's when the poor coping started. After 30 days, I was clear. I was cleared by the district attorney's office, and it was a justifiable shoot. Um, but before that, I started poorly coping, and what I mean by that is before my shooting, I collected wine, and I really wasn't into liquor at all. But after my shooting, I went to liquor because it got me where I wanted to go quicker. I didn't have to drink so much, and although I did, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of different poor coping strategies that I went through. This is an exterior vest carrier that a lot of police officers wear, and this patch can be removed. And I have another patch right here that says alcohol, casual sex, and drugs, and those were my poor coping. And what I mean by alcohol is I just didn't have a six pack of beer. I didn't just have a 12 pack of beer. I abused alcohol. And what I mean by that is I have a simulated wine glass. And what I would do is I'd pour a glass of wine similar to this. And then I'd take either NyQuil, sleeping medicine, cold and flu medicine, something like that, and make my own cocktail. And, even overdosed on these dollar store type allergy pills, the pink kind, because if you take too much of the pink kind, you feel real high and you feel real good. So there was a method to the madness. And what I would do is there was even one time that I reached into the medicine cabinet and took my daughter's prescribed cold medicine because I had codeine in it, and it made you feel all warm and fuzzy and cuddled up on the couch and yeah, I just didn't care. I was abusing alcohol. Another thing that I would do is before any social event, even if I would go to the grocery store, I would stop by the local gas station and I would buy two or three of these Fireball whiskeys, and I would drink them right in my car in the parking lot. And then I would either toss the empty bottle in the back of my car or toss the empty bottles out the window when I'm driving to my destination. And what I would do is I would rationalize that it would take about 30 minutes for the effects of alcohol to kick in, and then by then I'd be wherever I was going. And excuse me, and that's wrong. I'm very lucky that I didn't kill somebody, was arrested for drunk driving, crash my vehicle, hurt myself, kill myself in a car crash. I mean, I'm very, very lucky. And another thing that I would do is I have a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka here, and I would drink that in 30 minutes or less. I would buy that because it was like $5, $6. It's the cheap kind, and I just wanted to feel good, and I would drink that sometimes 30 minutes or less and just black out drunk and sleep the day, well, black out the day away. Um, and just straight from the bottle over rocks. I didn't like make any drinks or anything special. And, when I talk about casual sex, sex is special to me. It's fun, it's exciting, it's playful. In my eyes and the way I was raised, I was taught that you share that with somebody that you care about, somebody you love, somebody you marry, somebody you're committed to. But I would meet women online, strictly for sex, and it would be mutually agreed that we'd have sex. And just like the vodka, sometimes 30 minutes or less, we'd meet and we'd be having sex. Um, when a woman would come over to my house, there was kind of a routine that I would do, and one of it was is I have an energy drink, a large Red Bull energy drink. I would drink this, and then I would also have two of these little vodka bottles, and I would drink that because hey, it gives me energy, and the alcohol takes my inhibitions away. And then the condoms I would buy is a special condom that is like extended pleasure, so it numbs the sensation so the sex would last longer. And it was all about chasing that dopamine rush, that feel good. I wanted to numb my thoughts, what I was going through, my depression, and it didn't work. I remember laying in bed with a woman after we had sex, and I thought, Adam, you got to stop this. You got to knock this off. And I started not liking myself. I really didn't like myself. And, I would stress over, what if I get her pregnant? What if I catch an STD? But even those worries wasn't enough for me to stop. It took me years to stop that. And another thing I did is marijuana. A lot of people are like, yeah, come on, Adam, that's just pot. That ain't no big deal. It's just pot. But to me, it's a big deal because all my life, I wanted to grow up and be an ERCAR man, a police officer. So I took steps to stay away from all that stuff. I wasn't raised that way, morally, ethically, everything like that. But after my shooting, I didn't care. I smoked marijuana. I tried to marijuana, some marijuana gummies. I just didn't care. I was looking for the next thing to kind of numb the pain and make things go away. Um, Self-harm was another thing. I have a 12-inch crescent wrench, and I lied to my chief. I lied to my chief that supported me. And there were many times I come to work after my shooting and I would tell him I can't be here, and he would send me home. It's okay, go home. And not like roll his eyes and look at the schedule, okay, go home. He was very supportive. I mean, this is kind of a little off track, but I have a statement that he made to the media almost immediately that he supported me. And I found that and I put it in this frame and it sat on my desk for a while. It said, I think he believed that he had no other choice. I support him. And I knew he was genuine because I would hear him support me and defend what I did when he didn't know I was there. I could have been around the corner while he was in his office, and I'm like, he's talking about me, he's supporting me. So I knew it wasn't BS, it was real. And when you know your chief supports you, your supervisor, whomever, that means everything. You could be having a crappy day, and then you know that your chief, your boss supports you. That's really important. But getting back to the wrench and the self-harm, what I did was I would strike my knee multiple times, enough to cause redness, abrasions, bruising, and then I kind of walked into the emergency room and I lied to the doctors. I lied to the nurses and said that I had fell down my back door steps and hit my knee on a manhole cover that covered the septic tank. And they believed me, and they did x-rays, and they gave me medicine, and they gave me crutches, and a doctor's excuse to get out of work for a week. And it was around the 4th of July. And at that time, I was starting to realize that fireworks and loud noises and stuff were starting to become some of my triggers. So instead of just going into my chief and saying, Chief, this is what's going on, I thought I had to lie because I felt like I was running out of I can't be here kind of excuses. So I made up my own, I lied to the man, the chief that supported me, and that still hurts today. Um, so what happened is December 28th, 2021, I was at an active shooter training at a elementary school, and I was seated comfortably like I am now. And we were watching PowerPoint presentations about different active shooters in the United States and overseas, and I started feeling uncomfortable and a knot in my stomach and just really hot. And about a minute passed, and I went to wipe my forehead, and it was drenched in sweat. I was having a panic attack. And there was probably about 20 or 30 other officers there. They all knew me. They all knew I was involved in a shooting. They all knew I killed somebody in the line of duty. And if I would have just raised my hand and said, I just can't do this. I need to take a break. It probably would have been okay. Um, but I think because of the stigma associated with it, my first reaction was I have to fight this and I have to hide it. I can't let anybody know what's going on. I can't. And that's what I did. And I went through the training and then I went on a couple days off. And then I went on a shift for New Year's Eve. And I started this shift at 11 a.m., the same time I started my shift of my shooting. And I was a detective at the time, but I was working a patrol shift, to cover the schedule because people had off. And so I was in uniform and I got into a Mark Squad car and I remember setting my gear up and everything. And then I thought, you know what? Forget it. I'm done. I quit. I ain't doing this no more. And I don't think I wanted to quit being a cop. I think I wanted to quit coping the way I had been for 6, 7 years because I knew it wasn't working for me anymore. And it came to it was just like, you know what? You have to stop. You have to stop this, Adam, or you're gonna lose everything. You've always wanted to do this job, and you're gonna lose everything if you don't stop and get the right kind of help. Um, so what I did is I reached out to one of the sergeants that I knew, and I said, I need you to come with me to speak to the chief. I'm quitting. And he's like, hold up, you're not quitting. And I said, yeah, I am. And he met with me in the squad and we had a little talk and then we went in and talked to the chief and they were very supportive. This was a new chief. The chief that was with me during my shooting had retired a few months earlier. And he sent me home. He's like, take as much time as you need. Let me know when you want to come back to work. And so I did that. And I went home and I would say probably about 2 weeks passed. And after that 2 weeks, I called the chief and I said, I'm ready to come back to work. And he said, that's great, but you need to have a fitness for duty evaluation to make sure you're okay to come back to work. And I was all for that because 3 years after my shooting occurred, I started sharing my experience. So I was a strong mental health advocate, letting everybody know what I was going through. I was kind of a hypocrite because I was still doing all this casual sex, alcohol, and drugs, and kind of having the image that, hey, I'm good, which I was a mess still. Um, but anyways, I scheduled an appointment with the department psychologist, and the morning I was driving to the clinic, I thought, I'm going to lie. I'm going to beat this test or whatever test they're going to give me. I do not need, I'm fine. I've been back on the job. I've been doing okay. I'm going to lie and I can beat it. And then when I was sitting in the waiting room at the clinic, I thought, Adam, the only way that you're going to get better is you have to be honest. That's the only way. And I chose to be honest. And it was a 7 hour examination, different exams and stuff like that. And when everything was said and done, I was unfit for duty. I was diagnosed with, excuse me, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, PTSD, acute stress with dissociative features, and I couldn't go back to work. Excuse me. So I actually have a copy of that examination right here. And I remember looking in here the first time, and I remember crying when I'm reading this thing because inside this was all of the answers to my self-destructive behavior, my risky behavior, why I was doing that. And I'm reading it and I'm like, this is me. This is an explanation of me. And I also saw this as, what do I got to do now to get better? Because that's what I wanted to do. I was honest. I went through this. This really sucked, but it was also a good thing. Um, so I looked at that and I was unfit for duty, couldn't go back to work. So I requested a 90-day leave of absence and it was approved. And what I would do is during those 90 days, I was going to therapy 2 to 3 times a week. I was doing psychotherapy, which is talk therapy, EMDR, biofeedback, DBT, all kinds of stuff. And it was great. I was feeling good. I was feeling great. Um, and then I was put on a safety plan. Because one of the things that was mentioned inside this evaluation was some suicidal ideations. And now we talked about this earlier, but I have a complete plastic replica of my duty weapon. There's no working parts. It's a big piece of plastic. And I easily put my gun to my head a dozen times. And what I would do is when I was intoxicated, I would remove the magazine, clear the chamber, and take the round out, and then put the gun to my temple and pull the trigger because I wanted to hear that metallic click. And I can't explain that. And because I never thought, forget it, I'm done, I want to kill myself. But looking back, once I got healthier and looking back, there's no other explanation as to why I did that. There just isn't. And a lot of people said maybe you were planning to do it. I don't know. And I did it when I was intoxicated, and then I think, how many times did I do it when I was so blackout drunk that I don't remember? And I very well could have pulled the trigger, and they would have found me and thought, well, yeah, we get it. Adam was depressed because of what he went through, but no, it never crossed my mind to end my life. But I don't know, maybe something internally was pushing me towards that. Um, so I was put on a safety plan, and I was okay with that. It's different, for years of being a cop, you're always there for people when they're in crisis and they need help, and it's different when you're in the middle of that. And but I was still okay with it. I knew it was important. I knew it's something that should be done, and I didn't fight it. I accepted it. I was okay with it. Um, and then that same month, I received an order to immediately cease and desist speaking about my personal mental health testimonies when it comes to my shooting. I had been speaking since 2019. I established Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma, basically to educate officers about mental health, to share my experience in hopes that it would inspire others to seek help or to speak about their mental health. And I had been doing that since 2019, and it was never an issue. Now I'm on a leave of absence, and I continued that mental health outreach. And a sergeant came out to my house. I lived outside of that community, in his uniform, in his squad car, and gave me the order and basically said, "You need to stop talking about it, or you're going to be disciplined or terminated." And that scared the hell out of me because I'm thinking, I don't get it. I've been doing this since 2019, and it's never been an issue. Um, but I obeyed the order because hey, that's how I am, you know. I was told to do something, and it's like, okay, fine. And I mean, I had a website. I shut the website down. I stopped speaking. I mean, everything. So my leave of absence came to an end, and the chief wanted me to have a meeting with him, and I had a meeting with him. I went into the police department, and we met, and he told me, "We're not extending your leave of absence. You can either resign or we're going to terminate you." And I couldn't believe it. I had been there for 14 years. I had never been suspended. I had never been disciplined. I received awards. I received medals, um, citations from politicians. I mean, I was a good cop. I was the first detective in the history of the police department, and now I'm given the decision to resign or be terminated. And I thought it over, and I'm like, I ain't quitting. And I was terminated. I have another patch for this. It's not something I'm proud of. I mean, it ended up being a blessing in disguise. But I remember walking to my detective office and carrying out boxes and putting them in my Jeep, and the last thing the sergeant said to me was, maybe you can speak more now that you don't work here anymore. And he didn't say that in a mean way or sarcastic, but I'm thinking, is that what this is all about? Because I'm so open and transparent. And then I drove out of the parking lot and I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? My dream job of being an ERCAR man, a police officer, is done because I did my job. And I just couldn't believe it. And what I didn't mention is, when I went on a leave of absence, everybody ghosted me. Nobody communicated with me, text me, call me, email me, nothing. And when I was terminated, I still have that. It's been almost 4 years, and I still haven't heard from anybody. And these were people that we went on life and death calls together. They helped me move into an apartment. They knew my daughters, they knew my family. And then all of a sudden, when I really needed them the most, I was just ghosted. And some of these officers would come in early to work and knock on my detective door and say, "Hey, Adam, can I talk to you? I had a rough weekend." And I'm like, "Sure, come on in, shut the door." And they'd vent. I couldn't believe it. And it was like I was just abandoned. I was just kind of kicked to the curb, and Adam's not our problem anymore. So I went home, and my sister Amy called me and she's like, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I have no idea." And she goes, "Why don't you move down here by me and mom and dad?" And I'm thinking, Amy, I hardly have any money. And she goes, "All you have to do is get down here and we'll take care of the rest." And so that's what I did. I drove 3.5 hours, moved in with my sister. At the time, I stopped seeing a therapist. I wasn't taking medication because the medication that I had been on, the department psychologist weaned me off it because I started hearing, seeing, and smelling things that weren't there. I was dissociating a lot. I mean, in the middle of winter, I was driving my squad car and I thought I saw a sprinkler watering somebody's grass. I mean, that's not real. I mean, I just wasn't all there all the time, and so he weaned me off that medication. So I wasn't seeing a therapist or on medicine. And my sister saw that I was struggling, and I knew I was too a little bit, that I probably should get back into therapy, but I wasn't going to do it. And my main focus was to find a job because I was unemployed. And I'm thinking, I forget being a cop. Nobody's going to hire me. Once they hear this whole mental health story, they're going to think this guy's a nut. We're not taking a chance on him with liability and stuff. And so I started, applying at all these other jobs, and they weren't working out. And one day, my sister pulled me aside and said, "Adam, I want to tell you something, and I don't want you to be mad, but I've been looking for a therapist for you, behind my back." And I wasn't upset. And I said, I'm not mad at you. And she said, "I found one. And it's actually who I see, you know, it's who I see right now. I do see a therapist. Her name's Sharon. I sitting on her couch at 5 p.m. every Monday, and absolutely love her. She's great. And with that, I also got back on medicine. 20 milligrams of Lexapro right here. Sometimes I'm supposed to take propranolol, which is like a blood pressure medicine, but I have no idea where that is. I don't really need it, but yeah, 20 milligrams of Lexapro. I wake up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, I pop one of these pills, and I hit the ground running. I keep going because it's helpful. It's very helpful for me. The combination of therapy and taking that medicine is very helpful, and I'm going to continue to do that. Um, so once I finally put myself first, as first responders, we put everybody else first usually, and we don't tend to take care of ourselves first. But being terminated, and then my sister finding a therapist for me, getting back into therapy, getting back on medication, and getting healthier, I thought, you know what? I still love being a cop, and I want to be a cop again. So after about a year, I started applying. And the day after I mailed out applications, police departments started calling, emailing me, texting me, wanting to interview me. And there was a 2 week period where three police departments from three separate counties offered me positions. And I got to pick one. And I picked the Hartford Township Police Department where I work right now. I'm a captain of police. I'm second in command of the police department. And it's great. My chief is unbelievable. He's very supportive. We have a boat patrol and we have a therapy dog at our police department. So one day the chief and I were out on the boat and he goes, Adam, I know that you speak publicly about mental health. Keep doing that if you want to do it. I support you. And if you want to wear your uniform, you can do that too. And I'm like, wow, okay. Um, so I know he supports me, and that's one of the reasons why I'm speaking with you today because of that support. Um, it's not an easy thing to go through as a first responder. And, stopping that stigma, I think there's always going to be that stigma. I got this patch that says Stop the Mental Health Stigma Police. And I think there's always going to be that stigma. It's getting better because more and more people are understanding what first responders go through, and more people are talking about it and getting help. But for years, 6 or 7 years, I suffered in silence because of that stigma, because I thought I didn't need to go to therapy. I thought that I could handle it myself, that as long as I just keep going, everything's going to fall into place. And that I was wrong. I needed help. I needed the right kind of help. And I did initially see a therapist after my shooting. But when I went and sat down for 45 minutes the first couple times, when I left, I was like, that was a complete waste of time. This person has no idea what I'm going through. So then I would go a couple more times and take a few months off, and eventually I just stopped going altogether. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me because I really started suffering with the alcohol, with the casual sex, with the marijuana and the prescription drugs and over-the-counter drugs. And um, I was just a mess for years.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I have a couple questions myself before we open the
Sure.
floor up. So, I know when you and I had talked previously, you said that you had received like death threats and things like that after your critical incident. Do you
I
think
did.
that that really added to the suffering that you were given to yourself, or do you think it was just a combination of everything?
I think it added to it. I also think it's a combo of everything. I'm an emotional guy. I have a piece of hate mail right here that I'll read with you real quick. But this was one of the first pieces of hate mail that I received at the police department, and it was no return address, no signature on the letter. It said, "Hey," it was mailed to the murderer cop, and the letter said, "Hey to the murderer cop. What the hell is your big, strong armed, trained macho man bastard?" Serving the community, policeman doing shooting and murdering a 25-year-old young lady in a Walmart store. Throw some socks at her or a chair or a few pillows or a bicycle or some spray or a taser. You son of a bitch, murderous cop. I hope a drunk driver shoots you. So I mean, I got
Wow.
stuff like that, and I didn't read this until probably years after because my chief knew me pretty well, and he knew if I would have read that, I would have dwelled on it, and it would have festered, and it would have really upset me. So he told me, he said, "Yeah, we're getting hate mail, but I'm not going to let you read it until you think you're ready. I think you're ready," and that was good. But yeah, I think that added to it, and throughout the years, I received Facebook messages from anonymous people. And what people would do is they'd create fake Facebook accounts and then send me a nasty message, and then I'd read it, around the anniversary of my shooting, like I would ever forget it, and kind of telling me that I'm a lying, murderous pussy that shoots women and all this other stuff. And then when I would look at the Facebook account, you could tell it was something that was just recently created. So that hasn't happened in many years, but yeah, I think that was a combo, and then that just added, fuel to the fire because even though I was cleared and went back to work, I didn't stop thinking about it. I mean, I still
Yeah.
had to go back to that Walmart. When I went on calls, people would recognize me as the officer that was involved in the shooting. And for the most part, they were supportive. I mean, complete strangers would ask to give me a hug and say, we prayed for you. We're hoping you're doing good. It's good to see you back. Um, but I was very hyper vigilant. I was always hyper vigilant because and actually have another patch for that. Um, I was very hyper vigilant. I was always tuned into everything, always thinking, what if, always kind of paranoid, always thinking that something bad was going to happen to me. Um, and then getting hate mail, I had to watch my back and pay more attention to my surroundings than I had ever done before just because of that. And that's just not something you can turn off. Um,
Mhm.
I remember I stopped sleeping in my bedroom because if I was in my bedroom, I couldn't see what was going on in my living room and dining room. So I would lay on my sectional and I would have my off-duty gun and my duty weapon, and by laying in my sectional, I could look into my kitchen and see my back door, and then I could also see my front door. Just in case somebody would come in my house, I'd be able to stop them. And was anybody going to come in my house? No. But I was just really hyper vigilant, really paranoid, really worried. Um, and I'm sure the alcohol and everything else I was doing just added to that anxiety because anxiety is horrible. I mean, it was really, really bad.
Is there any questions from anybody who is online with us? If you do, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask those now. We'll give just a couple of seconds here. Okay. Well, if you do have any questions coming forward, we did get a little from looks like Dove there. She said thank you for sharing.
Thank you,
So
Doug. Appreciate it.
um, if you do have questions moving forward, we can put you in contact with Adam. Will you talk a little bit about Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma before we go?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm the founder of Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma. I established that to promote law enforcement wellness and pretty much first responder wellness, and in hopes that by me sharing my experience, that it will inspire others who work in the public safety profession to reach out for help or to support others who may be struggling with mental health. I mean, it's the real deal. It's not something that should be swept under the rug. And if you go to the website, you can actually find my real phone number. Um, it goes to my real phone. It's not a business phone. You can text me, you can call me, you can email me, you can use the contact form on there. If you want to talk, if you have suggestions, if you want to share your story, reach out to me. And if you need help, reach out to me too. And I'll do my best to help you and provide you with resources. But I just want everybody to know that it is okay to talk about your mental health, that you're not alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. There's so many resources out there, and there's so many people out there that will help you, and not just because they're getting paid for it. I mean, there's people that genuinely want to help you, genuinely want to make sure that you're okay. And with technology nowadays, it's so easy for us to get on our phones and Google it or send a text. Even if you're struggling and you don't understand it, don't understand what you're going through, say that. Reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm off. I don't get it. Something's not right. I need help." And then work together with somebody to get that help. Because it is possible. It's possible to get better. It's not easy to take that first step. I mean, it took me 6, 7 years, but it's possible. You can do it. And there's so many people out there that are willing to help.
That's very true. Paul said he loves your Velcro shirt tags and embrace it. Braces to show that the stigma is not necessary. If you're wearing a tag that says this is who I am, that stigma isn't necessary. So those are pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Adam. And again, visit Adam's website. Check out Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma. If you do need help, please reach out. If it's not to Adam, please reach out to someone, just so that you can get that help that you need. So thank you so much for joining us, Adam. I greatly appreciate you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.